When you ask an old schooler like me about their audio career, you will most likely get a lot of back in my day stories.
Back in my day, we didn't have them fancy computers.
But most of them will have a story about when they messed something up. That moment when they realize they aren't as smart as they thought they were. This happened to me on numerous occasions, and I could talk for hours about them, but I think it might be more valuable for you to hear the best pieces of advice I've ever received. Oddly enough, each of these revolve around the same basic concept. Get that chip off your shoulder. You see, when I first graduated from audio engineering school, I had a bit of a superhero complex. I believed that I am the trained audio engineer. Only I will decide where the microphone goes. You little musician, you just stay there and play your little instrument. Well, needless to say, I learned very quickly that I do not, in fact, have superpowers. And I also learned that an attitude like that is the quickest way to compel the musician to find a different engineer. One of my earliest experiences in the recording studio was with the Airmen of Note, the band that is a direct descendant of Glenn Miller's Army Air Corps band. During a break in the action, I spoke with one of their saxophone players, Joe Eckert. Joe said to me, "Guys like you scare me." Now, why would anyone be scared of me? He explained that he has been working for years on crafting the tone of his instrument. But someone like me with the wrong choice of mic or placement or just a few twiddles of your knobs there can completely destroy his sound. It struck me that even though I was the recording engineer, he had probably spent more time in the recording studio than I had at that point. And he was probably more qualified to decide when the sound of his horn is right. I do not like where this is going. It's also worth noting in that recording session I managed to erase an entire song, forcing 20 people to come back into the recording studio and record it again. I learned a lot of hard lessons that day. The next piece of advice comes from Greg Lukens of Washington Professional Systems. That's Washington, D.C., by the way. Greg said that the job of an audio engineer is the technical communications manager between a performer's art and the performer's audience. To this day, that is the best description of our job I've ever heard. Let's say that a musician is performing to a single person in their living room. At this point, there's no need for me. The artist is perfectly able to communicate the message embedded in their art directly to the audience. But put that musician in a much bigger living room, say a 2,000-seat performance hall. Now we need technology to deliver that message to the audience. That's where the audio engineer comes in. But what you have to remember is that everything you do can affect the quality of the message that the audience hears. In fact, it can alter the message entirely. So as Greg pointed out, it becomes the job of the audio engineer to clearly understand the artist's vision and manage technology to deliver that vision to the audience. Not just throw up a bunch of stacks and crank it up to 11. Yeah, well, if it's too loud, you're too old. Our next piece of advice comes from Al Schmitt, who has been making records since the beginning of time, but has won more Grammy Awards than any recording engineer ever. Al suggests that when you're working with a new musician in the studio, ask them where to put the microphone on their instrument. What? No! Yes. I know that sounds like weird advice coming from someone who probably doesn't need to ask anyone where to put a microphone, but his reasoning is simple. The musician wants a good recording just as badly as you do. And when they come into the studio with an engineer they've never worked with before, their anxiety level is pretty high. This simple gesture of asking the musician what techniques were used the last time they had a successful recording immediately tells the musician that they can trust you, that you are just as committed to the session as they are. Well, if you don't like the way the mic sounds, you can always change it from there. But this way the musician feels better about trusting you with their sound. And a little footnote about Al Schmitt. The day after I finished the first draft for the script of this video, I saw this article about his new book coming out next week. In the headline of the CNET article, it said that the secret to his success has been listening to the artist. You all suck, you know that? The message here is simple. It's not about us. We are here to serve the needs of the artist. And when we forget this, we become less effective at our job. That's not to say we shouldn't strive to improve our technical chops. We should always be doing that. But just remember that when you step into the studio, it's not about what we want. It's what the artist wants. And try not to erase anything. God, what I would have given for an undo button back then. And finally, let's hear Frank Filipetti's take on the subject, which he explained during a roundtable discussion at the Audio Engineering Society convention in 2012.
Getting our ideas and stuff down, but at the end of the day, this is a service industry. You are working for the artist. As one artist once told me when we got into a big argument once about some mix that we were doing, he said, look, Frank, you know, when this album finishes, you're going to go on and you're going to do another 6 or 7 projects this year. And if this album doesn't make it, so what? You know, no one will hear about it. They won't know anything about it, but you'll go on and do other records. But if it doesn't make it, it's my career. And it's something you always have to keep in mind. It is their career. We're here to not only service our creativity, but more importantly, to get the best out of the artists that we can.
If you'd like to see that entire roundtable video, it can be found on the AES website. But you have to be an AES member, which I highly recommend that you do. There is a treasure trove of educational material as well as many other benefits available to AES members. Link in the description below.
Oh, that's hot.
Now before I go, I wonder if Grandpa has any last words of wisdom for us.
Another thing, we didn't even have microphones. We just repeated everything we heard.
Yeah, never mind. See you next time. He explained that twiddles of your knobs there and and to manage technology to communicate. I'm not going to be able to deliver this line. The last time they had a successful recording, it's not about us. Damn it. And when we forget this, say a 2,000 seat performance arena, performance hall. I saw this article about him coming out the day after I finished this the script of this video. And if you'd like to see, are we recording?
Yep.
Okay. No, you were just popping for no reason. An attitude like that is the quickest way to get a. Everything you do can alter the. I am the trained audio engineer. I only. Some superhero. How did that look?